The crystal spires of Veltaron stretched toward the twin suns like frozen lightning. Empress Zirathel stood on the highest balcony of her palace, watching the morning light dance across the city below. Her scales, a deep purple that shifted to silver in the sunlight, caught the warm rays as she breathed in the familiar scents of her homeworld. Beside her, completely still and silent, stood Marcus Chen. The human had been her diplomatic partner for 3 years now, ever since the first contact protocols had been established between Earth and the Veltaran Empire. Where other species sent their most aggressive negotiators or their most decorated military leaders, humanity had sent this quiet man with kind eyes and an easy smile. Zirathel had thought it was a mistake at first. Marcus was neither imposing nor intimidating. He stood barely 6 feet tall, small compared to her own 7-foot frame. His dark hair was always slightly messy, his clothes simple and practical. When he spoke in the council chambers, his voice was gentle, never raised, never demanding. The other alien diplomats had initially dismissed him entirely. That had been their first mistake. "The Corvin delegation will arrive within the hour," Marcus said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. His English was translated instantly by the bio-implant all diplomats wore, but Zirathel had long since learned his language. She enjoyed the sound of his actual voice. "Yes," she replied, her own voice carrying the harmonic undertones of her species. "They come seeking our military support against the Helix Coalition. What they do not realize is that we have already decided to refuse them." Marcus nodded slowly. "The Corvin Empire has a history of breaking agreements when they become inconvenient. Supporting them would destabilize the entire sector." This was why Zirathel valued her human partner. While others saw only the immediate benefits of any alliance, Marcus understood the long-term consequences. In 3 years of working together, his advice had never steered her wrong. The Veltaran Empire had grown stronger, more prosperous, and more respected throughout the galaxy, largely due to the diplomatic strategies he had helped develop. "The Council of Lords will not like our decision," Zirathel continued. "Lord Vextar especially has been pushing for this alliance. He sees only the military might the Corvins could provide." "Lord Vextar sees what he wants to see," Marcus replied. "He's convinced that strength comes only from the ability to destroy. He's never understood that true power comes from the ability to create, to build, to inspire others to follow willingly." Zirathel's scaled head turned toward him, studying his profile as he continued to gaze out over the city. There was something in his voice, a quiet certainty that went deeper than mere opinion. In their years of partnership, she had come to recognize that Marcus spoke from experience, not just theory. Yet she knew almost nothing about his past before he had arrived on Veltaran as Earth's diplomatic representative. The human's background file was surprisingly sparse. Born in a place called San Francisco on Earth, educated at something called Stanford University, served briefly in Earth's military before transitioning to diplomatic service. No details about family, no mention of significant relationships, no records of particular achievements or decorations. For a species that documented everything, humans had sent remarkably little information about Marcus Chen. "Your Majesty?" a voice interrupted from behind them. Zirathel turned to see her aide, Castell, approaching with careful steps. The younger Veltaran scales were still the bright green of youth, though they were already beginning to show hints of the blue that would come with age. "The Corvin delegation has arrived ahead of schedule," Castell announced. "They are requesting an immediate audience. Lord Vextar has already gone to greet them personally." Zirathel's eyes narrowed slightly. Protocol demanded that she, as Empress, be the first to welcome foreign dignitaries. By rushing to greet them himself, Vextar was making a statement about his support for the alliance. It was a calculated insult to her authority. "Summon the full council," she commanded. "We will meet them in the great chamber within the hour." As Castell hurried away, Marcus placed a gentle hand on her arm. "He's trying to force your hand," he said quietly. "By publicly aligning himself with the Corvins before the formal meeting, he's making it harder for you to refuse them without appearing weak to the other lords." "I am aware of his tactics," Zirathel replied, though she was grateful for Marcus's observation. "The question is how to counter them without creating an open rift in the council." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his brown eyes distant as he considered the problem. When he spoke again, his voice carried that same quiet certainty she had noticed before. "The Corvins will make their proposal first," he said. Let Vextar add his support. Then when they ask for your response, don't give them one immediately. Instead, ask questions. Ask about their recent conflicts with the Nexus Collective. Ask about the civilian casualties on Rodan Prime. Ask about the supply lines they'll need to maintain a war against the Helix Coalition. Zirathel nodded slowly. She understood the strategy. By asking detailed questions, she would force the Corvins to reveal the weaknesses in their position without directly rejecting them. "And if they have answers prepared?" she asked. Marcus smiled slightly, and for just a moment, Zirathel saw something flicker in his eyes. Something hard and knowing that seemed completely at odds with his usual gentle demeanor. "They won't," he said simply. "Trust me." An hour later, the great chamber buzzed with tension. The circular room was designed to accommodate all the major species of the galactic community, with different atmospheric zones and gravity fields adjusted to each delegation's needs. At the center, raised on a dais of black stone, stood the Empress's throne. Zirathel sat with perfect posture, her ceremonial robes arranged in precise folds. To her right stood Marcus, still in his simple dark suit, looking almost plain among the elaborate uniforms and exotic physiologies surrounding him. To her left, Lord Vexitar waited with barely contained impatience. The Corvin delegation was impressive, she had to admit. Their leader, War Commander Thraktos, stood nearly 8 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming black under the chamber's lights. Behind him ranged a dozen other Corvins, each one a seasoned military officer with scars and battle decorations marking their carapaces. "Mighty Empress," Thraktos began, his voice a harsh clicking that the translators rendered in formal tones. "We come before you in friendship, seeking alliance against a common enemy. The Helix Coalition grows bolder with each passing cycle. They have violated no fewer than 6 neutral zones in the past year alone. They must be stopped before they threaten all civilized space." Lord Vextar stepped forward before Zirathel could respond. "The Veltaran Empire recognizes the threat posed by the Coalition," he declared. "We would be honored to stand beside the mighty Corvin fleet in defense of order and civilization." Murmurs rose from the assembled lords. Some nodded approval at Vextar's words, while others remained carefully neutral. Zirathel noted who supported what, filing the information away for future use. "War Commander," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Your concern about the Coalition is noted. However, I find myself curious about certain aspects of your proposal. Perhaps you could enlighten me about your recent engagement with the Nexus Collective fleet at Rodan Prime." The slightest hesitation flickered across Thraktos's features before he answered. "A necessary action, Majesty. The Collective was providing material support to Coalition forces." "I see," Zirathel replied. "And the civilian casualties from that engagement?" "Regrettable but unavoidable," the War Commander said stiffly. "War demands difficult choices." Beside her, Marcus remained motionless, but Zirathel caught the almost imperceptible shake of his head. She pressed on. "Indeed. And how many civilian vessels were destroyed in that action?" This time, the hesitation was more pronounced. "The exact numbers are still being compiled." "Approximately, then." Several dozen non-combatant vessels were lost, Thraktos admitted. A ripple of unease went through the chamber. Several dozen was a significant number, especially for what was supposedly a military engagement with the Nexus Collective. I see, Zirathel said again. And regarding your supply lines for this proposed campaign against the Coalition, how do you intend to maintain them across such vast distances? The Coalition controls several key hyperspace routes. Now Thraktos was clearly uncomfortable. The Corvan fleet is experienced in extended operations. We will adapt our strategies as needed. Without secure supply lines? Zirathel pressed. War Commander, surely someone of your experience understands that logistics win more battles than weapons. The Empress raises important points, came a new voice from the chamber. Lord Kayarthon, one of the older and more conservative members of the council, had spoken. Perhaps the War Commander could provide more detailed operational plans? Zirathel hid her satisfaction. Marcus had been right. The Corvans had come expecting an easy agreement based on fear of the Coalition. They hadn't prepared for detailed scrutiny of their military capabilities or strategic planning. Thraktos's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among his species. With respect, Majesty, such detailed plans are sensitive military information. Surely the Empress understands the need for operational security. Of course, Zirathel agreed smoothly. However, the Veltaran Empire cannot commit our resources to a campaign without understanding the basic strategic framework. Surely you can provide general parameters. The War Commander looked toward his aides, but their body language suggested they had no better answers prepared. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Perhaps, Marcus said quietly, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. The War Commander could share your assessment of Coalition fleet strength, specifically their current deployment patterns and defensive capabilities? All eyes turned to the human. There was something in his tone, a subtle confidence that made even the Corvans pay attention. The Coalition maintains approximately 200 active warships across 15 sectors, Thraktos said, apparently relieved to have a question he could answer. Their primary defensive strategy relies on mobile strike forces rather than fixed fortifications. Marcus nodded slowly. 200 ships. And how many of those are first-line battleships versus escort vessels and support craft? Approximately 60 to 70 capital ships, the War Commander admitted. I see, Marcus said. And the Corvan fleet can field how many capital ships for this campaign? The Empire maintains over 400 warships, Thraktos replied with obvious pride. Capital ships specifically, War Commander, not total fleet strength. The distinction was important, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Capital ships were the heavy battleships and carriers that determined the outcome of major engagements. Escort vessels and support craft were necessary, but they couldn't stand against enemy capital ships in direct combat. 97 front-line capital ships, Thraktos said reluctantly. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and Zirathel could almost see him calculating in his head. When he spoke again, his voice carried a tone she had never heard from him before. Cold, analytical, military. So the Corvan Empire, with 97 capital ships, proposes to engage a coalition force of 60 to 70 capital ships, while maintaining supply lines across contested space and simultaneously defending your own territory against potential Nexus collective retaliation. He paused, letting the implications sink in. War Commander, what was the outcome of the Battle of Kepler's Reach? The question seemed to come from nowhere, and Zirathel saw confusion on many faces in the chamber. Kepler's Reach wasn't a recent engagement, and she couldn't immediately recall the significance. Thraktos, however, went completely still. When he spoke, his voice was careful and controlled. I am not familiar with that particular engagement. No? Marcus asked mildly. Corvin Third Fleet versus a smaller human task force, approximately 18 months ago. Ring any bells? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Zirathel realized that every human diplomat and aide in the chamber had gone very quiet, very still. They were all watching Marcus with expressions she couldn't quite read. There was a minor skirmish in that sector, Thraktos admitted. A misunderstanding regarding territorial boundaries. A misunderstanding, Marcus repeated softly. Yes, I suppose you could call it that. 47 Corvin ships versus 12 human vessels. Should have been a simple victory for your forces, shouldn't it? The war commander said nothing. Instead, the Corvin Third Fleet withdrew after losing 8 capital ships and having 6 more severely damaged. The human task force lost 1 destroyer and had 2 ships with minor damage. Marcus's voice remained conversational, almost casual. That's quite a misunderstanding, wouldn't you agree? The silence in the chamber was absolute. Zirathel stared at her human partner, seeing him as if for the first time. This wasn't the gentle diplomat she had worked with for 3 years. This was someone else entirely. Someone who knew military engagements in precise detail. Someone who spoke of human military capabilities with the confidence of personal knowledge. How do you know those details? Thraktos demanded, his voice harsh with anger and something that might have been fear. Marcus smiled. And it wasn't the warm, friendly expression Zirathel was used to seeing. It was cold and sharp and held no humor at all. I know because I was there, War Commander. I was the tactical officer aboard the UES Midway when your fleet decided to test human resolve. The revelation hit the chamber like a physical force. Gasps and startled exclamations rose from the assembled delegates. Zirathel felt her own breath catch as the implications crashed over her. Marcus Chen wasn't just a diplomat. He was military, human military. And if he had been present at Kepler's Reach, if he knew the tactical details of that engagement, then he was far more than just any ordinary officer. You see, Marcus continued, his voice still conversational but carrying an undertone of absolute certainty, humans have a saying, know your enemy. Before committing to any alliance, we like to understand exactly who we're dealing with. The Corvin Empire has lost its last 4 major engagements. Your military strategy is outdated, your logistics are inadequate, and your commanders consistently underestimate their opponents. He took a single step forward, and somehow that small movement made him seem larger, more imposing, despite being shorter than almost everyone else in the room. The Helix Coalition isn't the real threat to galactic stability, War Commander. Aggressive, expansionist empires that attack neutral shipping and civilian targets are the threat. Empires that break treaties when convenient and then come begging for military support when their own aggression catches up with them. Thraktos's exoskeleton was literally rattling with rage. You dare lecture me, human? Your species is barely out of its own star system. My species, Marcus replied calmly, has never lost a fleet engagement since we entered galactic space. Can yours say the same? The war commander raised one clawed arm as if to strike, but stopped as every human in the chamber shifted slightly. It was a subtle movement, barely noticeable. But suddenly the Corvin delegation found themselves surrounded by humans who no longer looked like diplomats and aides. Zirathel's mind raced. How had she missed it? How had anyone missed it? The humans hadn't sent diplomats at all. They had sent soldiers, elite soldiers, from the look of it, disguised as civilian personnel. This meeting is over, she announced, her voice cutting through the tension. The Veltaran Empire will consider the Corvin proposal and provide our answer within the standard 10-day period. It was a diplomatic way of saying no without explicitly refusing, and everyone in the chamber understood it. Thraktos looked as if he wanted to argue, but after a glance at Marcus and the other humans, he apparently thought better of it. We will await your decision, Majesty, he said through gritted teeth. With obvious reluctance, he led his delegation from the chamber. As the great doors closed behind them, the remaining lords began talking among themselves in excited whispers. Lord Vextar stood frozen, his political maneuvering suddenly revealed as the amateur hour it had always been. Zirathel looked at Marcus, this stranger who had been her partner for 3 years. He was watching her with those same kind brown eyes, but now she could see the steel beneath. The calculation. The deadly competence that had been hidden behind his gentle manner. "We need to talk," she said quietly. Marcus nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. I believe we do." Zirathel's private study was a sanctuary of quiet elegance. Ancient texts from across the galaxy lined the walls, while soft lighting cast gentle shadows across comfortable seating areas. It was here that she conducted her most sensitive conversations, away from the formal protocols of the throne room. Marcus stood near the great window, looking out at the city below. He had shed the role of simple diplomat so completely that Zirathel wondered how she had ever believed it. His posture was different now, more alert, more controlled. When he turned to face her, his eyes held depths she was only beginning to understand. "How much of it was a lie?" she asked without preamble. "None of it," Marcus replied simply. "I am a diplomat. I did attend Stanford University. I do believe in peaceful solutions whenever possible." He paused, considering his words. "I simply didn't mention my other qualifications." Zirathel settled into her favorite chair, a piece carved from Veltaran crystal that molded itself to her form. "Tell me about Kepler's Reach." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of memory. "The Corvins had been testing our defenses for months. Small raids, probing attacks, always with plausible excuses. Intelligence suggested they were planning something larger, but we needed proof of their intentions." He moved away from the window, beginning to pace slowly. The Midway was part of a small task force sent to patrol the contested zone. When the Corvin Third Fleet arrived, we knew it was the confrontation everyone had been expecting. "You said 47 Corvin ships against 12 human vessels," Zirathel said. "Those odds should have been impossible to overcome." "They should have been," Marcus agreed, "but the Corvins made several critical errors. They assumed human ships were built like everyone else's. They assumed our tactics would follow standard galactic doctrine. They assumed our weapons were comparable to theirs." His smile was grim. "They were wrong on all counts." Zirathel leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering directly, Marcus activated the holographic display built into her study table. Star charts appeared in the air between them, showing the Kepler system in detail. "Human warships are different," he said, manipulating the display to show ship schematics. "Most galactic civilizations build for intimidation as much as function. Large, impressive vessels with obvious weapon emplacements and thick armor. The hologram showed typical Corvin and Veltaran ship designs, all flowing lines and impressive bulk. Then the display shifted to show human vessels. Zirathel blinked in surprise. They were smaller, more angular, with clean lines that spoke of pure function over form. "Human ships are built for one purpose only," Marcus continued. "To win battles. No wasted space, no unnecessary systems, no compromises for appearance. Every cubic meter is optimized for combat effectiveness." "They look so plain," Zirathel observed. "Exactly. That's the point. When the Corvins saw our task force, they saw 12 small, unimpressive ships. What they didn't realize was that each human destroyer carries more firepower than their heavy cruisers, and our cruisers can outgun their battleships." The holographic display shifted again, showing weapon ranges and firing patterns. Zirathel's eyes widened as she processed the data. "These specifications," she began, "are classified," Marcus finished. "I'm showing you this because you need to understand what humanity brings to the galactic community. We're not the primitive newcomers everyone assumes we are." Zirathel studied the displays more carefully. The human weapons showed ranges and power outputs that exceeded anything in her own navy. More disturbing was the way the ships were designed to work together, each vessel's capabilities perfectly complementing the others. You planned this, she realized. The whole diplomatic mission. You didn't come here to learn about us. You came to position yourselves. Marcus nodded slowly. Humanity learned long ago that knowledge is the ultimate weapon. We've been studying every species in the galactic community since first contact, not just their languages and customs, but their military capabilities, their political structures, their economic systems. We know more about the Velteron Empire than most of your own lords do. The implications hit her like a physical blow. The trade agreements, the technology exchanges, the mutual defense protocols we've been negotiating, all designed to benefit both our peoples, Marcus assured her. But yes, also designed to give humanity strategic advantages. We prefer partnerships to conquest, Majesty, but we're not naive enough to enter any relationship without understanding exactly where we stand. Zirathel felt a chill run down her spine. What else don't I know about you? Marcus was quiet for a moment, then reached into his jacket. Zirathel tensed, but he only pulled out a small device she didn't recognize. Before I answer that, he said, I need to check for surveillance devices. The device emitted a soft humming sound as Marcus swept it around the room. Zirathel watched in growing alarm as it detected 3 separate listening devices hidden throughout her private study, devices she hadn't known existed. How did those get there? She demanded. Lord Vextar has been busy, Marcus replied, methodically disabling each device. He's been reporting your private conversations to the Corvin Intelligence Service for the past 6 months. The betrayal hit her like a slap. Vextar wasn't just politically ambitious, he was a traitor. How do you know this? Marcus finished with the surveillance devices and pocketed his detector. Because we've been monitoring his communications since we identified him as a security risk 8 months ago. You've been spying on my lords. We've been protecting our interests, Marcus corrected. And yours, though you didn't know it. Vextar was planning a coup, Majesty. The Corvin alliance was just the first step. Once he had foreign military support on Velteron, he intended to challenge your authority directly. Zirathel stared at him, feeling the foundations of everything she thought she knew crumbling beneath her. Why didn't you tell me? Because we needed proof that would stand up in your courts, Marcus replied, and because we needed to be certain you weren't involved. The casual way he said it made her blood run cold. You suspected me? We suspected everyone until we could verify their loyalties, Marcus said simply. It's standard procedure. Trust is earned through verification, not assumed through diplomacy. Zirathel rose from her chair and walked to the window, trying to process what she had learned. Below, her city sparkled in the afternoon light, but everything felt different now. How much of what she thought she controlled was real? How much was illusion maintained by human manipulation? What did you find when you investigated me? She asked without turning around. That you're exactly what you appear to be, Marcus replied. A leader who genuinely cares about her people and wants what's best for them. Someone who can be trusted to keep agreements and honor alliances. Someone worth partnering with for the long term. She turned back to face him. And if you had found otherwise? Marcus met her gaze steadily. Then we would have made different arrangements. The quiet certainty in his voice told her everything she needed to know. Humanity hadn't just been positioning themselves advantageously, they had been preparing for every possible contingency, including removing her from power if necessary. You're not diplomats at all, she said finally. You're intelligence operatives. Both, Marcus corrected. The 2 roles aren't mutually exclusive for humans. Every diplomatic mission is also an intelligence-gathering operation. Every cultural exchange is also an opportunity to assess capabilities and intentions. We learned long ago that survival requires understanding everything about everyone around you. Zirathel moved to her desk and activated its communication system. Security Command, this is the Empress. I need a priority sweep of the palace for surveillance devices. Full spectrum analysis, every room, every corridor. Acknowledged, Your Majesty, came the immediate reply. Estimated completion time is 4 hours. She cut the connection and looked back at Marcus. What else will they find? Enough to fill a significant intelligence briefing, Marcus admitted. Vextar wasn't the only one with divided loyalties. 3 other lords have been compromised to varying degrees. Your intelligence minister has been selling information to the Nexus Collective. 2 of your senior military officers have been passing fleet movements to Helix Coalition agents. Zirathel felt the room spin slightly. Her entire government was riddled with traitors and spies. How long have you known? We've been building the complete picture for over a year, Marcus said. It took time to map all the connections and verify all the intelligence. We wanted to be absolutely certain before we acted. Acted? She repeated sharply. What action have you taken? Marcus smiled that cold, calculating smile again. This afternoon's revelation about my background wasn't accidental, Majesty. By now, every intelligence service in the galaxy is scrambling to reassess their understanding of human capabilities. The Corvins are panicking because they realize they may have significantly underestimated us. The Nexus Collective is wondering what else they don't know about human operations. And my compromised officials? We'll find their communication channels suddenly unreliable, Marcus replied. Their handlers will become mysteriously unavailable. Their payment systems will develop technical difficulties. Meanwhile, you now have complete documentation of their activities to use as you see fit. Zirathel stared at him. You've been running a counterintelligence operation throughout my entire empire. We've been protecting our investment, Marcus corrected. A stable, secure Veltaran empire serves everyone's interests. Chaos and betrayal serve no one except those who profit from conflict. Your investment, she repeated slowly. Is that what I am to you? An investment? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried a gentleness she had almost forgotten. You are the most remarkable leader I have ever had the privilege to work with, he said simply. In 3 years, I have watched you build consensus among species that have been enemies for centuries. I have seen you sacrifice personal gain for the welfare of your people again and again. I have witnessed you treat even your political opponents with respect and dignity. He paused. You are someone worth protecting, worth supporting, worth calling an ally and a friend. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. But if I had been different, then humanity would have made different choices, Marcus acknowledged. We don't have the luxury of sentiment when it comes to galactic politics. Too many lives depend on our decisions. Zirathel walked back to the window, her mind racing. What happens now? That depends on you, Marcus replied. You can request that Earth recall its diplomatic mission. You can choose to view our methods as unacceptable interference and end our partnership. Or you can decide that having allies who are capable of protecting your interests, even when you're not aware they need protecting, might be valuable. You can choose to work with us to build something stronger than either of our peoples could manage alone. She was quiet for several minutes, watching the city below. Finally, she turned back to him. Show me, she said. Show you what? Everything, she said firmly. If we're truly going to be partners, I want to see exactly what humanity is capable of. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. If I'm going to trust you, I need to know who I'm trusting. Marcus studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. He pulled out another device, this one larger and more complex than the first. Computer, this is Agent Chen, he said into the device. Authorization Omega-77 Alpha. Request immediate secure link to Midway Actual. The device hummed for a moment, then projected a three-dimensional image of a human woman in military uniform. She appeared to be standing on the bridge of a warship, with activity buzzing around her in the background. "Marcus," the woman said with obvious relief. "Good to see you in one piece. Status report." "Mission parameters have changed, Admiral," Marcus replied. "Empress Zirathel has been fully briefed on our operations and has requested complete disclosure of human capabilities in this sector. Request permission to proceed with Protocol 7. The woman's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's quite a departure from the original plan. Assessment of security risks?" "Minimal to zero," Marcus replied without hesitation. "The Empress has proven herself completely trustworthy. Full partnership protocols are recommended." "Understood," the Admiral said after a moment. "Permission granted for Protocol 7 disclosure. Download will begin immediately." The holographic display expanded, filling half the room with detailed star charts, ship movements, and tactical assessments. Zirathel watched in growing amazement as the scope of human operations became clear. They had ships positioned throughout the galaxy, not just in the official first contact zones. They had detailed intelligence on every major government and military force. They had contingency plans for dozens of possible conflicts and crisis scenarios. "How many ships do you have out there?" she asked quietly. "More than anyone realizes," Marcus replied, "including most of our own government. Humanity learned long ago that the greatest victories are the ones your enemies never know you won." The display shifted to show human shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and nebulas, massive construction projects that had been invisible to galactic surveys. Fleets of vessels unlike anything she had seen. Technologies that seemed decades ahead of anything else in known space. "This is impossible," she breathed. "Your species has only been in space for a few decades. How could you have built all this?" "Because we've been preparing for this moment for longer than you think," Marcus replied. "The human government you've been dealing with, the Earth that signed the first contact treaties, represents only a portion of humanity. We've been exploring the galaxy longer than anyone knows, learning, preparing, building. But the first contact protocols? We're exactly that. First official contact. There's a significant difference between first contact and first presence." Zirathel stared at the displays surrounding her, trying to comprehend the implications. "How long?" "Humans have been observing galactic civilization for over a century," Marcus admitted. "We've been learning your languages, studying your cultures, mapping your territories, and assessing your capabilities since before most of the current governments existed." The room seemed to tilt around her. Everything she thought she knew about recent galactic history was wrong. Humanity hadn't emerged from their home system as naive newcomers. They had emerged as a fully informed, completely prepared military and economic power that had been watching and learning for generations. "The technology exchanges," she said slowly. "The innovations you've shared with us. They weren't cutting-edge human developments. They were technologies we were comfortable releasing," Marcus confirmed. "Useful enough to demonstrate good faith, primitive enough not to reveal our actual capabilities." Zirathel felt something cold settle in her chest. "What are your actual capabilities?" Marcus gestured to the displays around them. "What you're seeing represents approximately 30% of current human space operations. The rest is classified at levels I don't have access to." "30%?" she repeated weakly. "Majesty," Marcus said gently, "humanity doesn't just have a few advantages over other galactic civilizations. We are so far ahead in most areas that the gap is barely measurable. Our worst ships could defeat the best vessels most empires can field. Our basic technologies are centuries ahead of what others consider advanced." "Then why?" she demanded. "Why the charade? Why pretend to be weak? Why not simply take what you want?" Marcus's expression softened. "Because taking what we want would require destroying everything worth having, because conquest creates enemies, where partnership creates allies, because a galaxy full of prosperous, independent civilizations is far more valuable than a galaxy full of resentful subjects. He moved closer, his voice becoming more personal. And because we genuinely believe that diversity makes everyone stronger, humanity has learned incredible things from our partnerships with other species. The Veltaran approach to material science has advanced our technology by decades. Corvin military logistics have taught us new approaches to supply chain management. Even the Nexus Collective's economic theories have helped us optimize our resource allocation. So we're all just sources of information for you? You're partners, Marcus said firmly. The information flows both ways. Every technology we've shared, every defensive capability we've helped develop, every economic opportunity we've created has been genuine. We benefit from stable, prosperous partners far more than we would from conquered territories. Zirathel walked slowly around the holographic displays, studying the scope of human presence throughout the galaxy. Ships, bases, monitoring stations, economic networks that touched every major trade route and industrial center. "What happens to species that choose not to be partners?" she asked quietly. Marcus was silent for a long moment. "Nothing, usually. We monitor them to ensure they don't become threats, but otherwise we leave them alone. Humanity has no interest in forcing partnerships on unwilling participants. But if they become threats, then they stop being threats," Marcus replied simply. "One way or another." The casual finality in his voice made her shiver. She was beginning to understand that humanity's gentle diplomatic approach wasn't born from weakness or idealism. It was simply the most efficient method of achieving their goals. When gentle methods failed, she suspected the alternatives were far less pleasant. She stopped in front of a display showing the Veltaran system itself. Human ships were positioned throughout the outer system, completely invisible to her own sensor networks. "You've been protecting us," she realized. "This whole time, you've been maintaining a defensive perimeter around our space." "The Veltaran Empire is valuable to us," Marcus confirmed. "Your people's natural empathy makes you excellent mediators. Your technological innovations complement our own research. Your strategic position makes you natural allies for long-term stability in this sector. But more than that," he continued, his voice becoming personal again, "you specifically have been valuable to us. Your leadership, your wisdom, your genuine commitment to peace and prosperity. The galaxy needs leaders like you, Majesty. We will protect what needs protecting." Zirathel turned to face him, seeing her human partner with completely new eyes. Marcus Chen wasn't just a diplomat or even just an intelligence operative. He was a representative of the most advanced military power in known space, sent to evaluate and potentially protect a species they valued as allies. "This is why you knew about Vextar's plans," she said. "You've been monitoring all threats to Veltaran stability." "All threats," Marcus confirmed. "Internal and external, political and military, economic and social. Your empire is under the protection of the Human Intelligence Network, whether you realize it or not. And if I had chosen differently today? If I had sided with the Corvins?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Then we would have been very disappointed, and we would have made alternative arrangements to ensure galactic stability." Zirathel stared at him, finally understanding the true scope of what she was dealing with. Humanity wasn't just another species trying to find its place in galactic politics. They were already the dominant power, so advanced that they could afford to be patient, generous, and gentle with their neighbors, not because they were weak, but because they were so strong that traditional measures of power were meaningless. For the first time since the meeting had begun, Empress Zirathel found herself completely unable to move, unable to think, unable to process the enormity of what she had learned. She stood frozen in the middle of her study, surrounded by displays showing the true face of humanity's galactic presence, finally understanding that everything she thought she knew about the balance of power in known space was utterly, completely wrong. Time seemed to stop in Zirathel's study. The holographic displays continued to rotate slowly around her, showing the vast network of human operations that spanned the galaxy, but she couldn't focus on any of it. Her mind felt locked, unable to process the magnitude of what Marcus had revealed. Humanity wasn't just another galactic power. They were the galactic power, so far advanced that they could afford to play gentle shepherd to species that thought themselves independent. The Veltaran Empire, which she had believed to be one of the strongest civilizations in known space, was essentially under human protection whether they knew it or not. "Majesty?" Marcus's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you all right?" Zirathel tried to speak, but found her voice wouldn't work. Her scaled hands trembled slightly as she stared at a display showing human ships positioned throughout systems she had thought were empty space. Hidden bases in nebulas she had assumed were uninhabitable. Manufacturing facilities in asteroid fields her own scouts had surveyed and declared empty. "Computer, reduce display intensity by 50%, Marcus commanded. The overwhelming holographic projections dimmed, making the room feel less oppressive. "Majesty, please sit down." She found herself being guided to her chair, though she couldn't remember deciding to move. Marcus knelt beside her, his face filled with genuine concern. "I know it's overwhelming," he said gently. "I probably should have prepared you better for the scope of it." "Overwhelming," she repeated weakly. "That's one word for it." She finally managed to look at him directly. "Marcus, what are you people?" He was quiet for a moment, considering how to answer. "We're what survival makes you become," he said finally. "Humanity spent most of its existence fighting each other over limited resources on a single world. We learned to innovate or die, to adapt or be conquered, to outthink our opponents or be destroyed by them. When we finally reached space, we brought those lessons with us." "But the scope of this," Zirathel gestured weakly at the displays around them. "The planning, the coordination, the sheer scale of operations. How is any of this possible?" "Because we learned early that information is the ultimate weapon," Marcus replied. "While other species were building bigger ships or stronger armies, humans were building better intelligence networks. While others were perfecting their weapons, we were perfecting our ability to know everything about everyone around us." He stood and moved to the holographic controls, bringing up a new display that showed historical galactic conflicts over the past century. Every major war, every diplomatic crisis, every economic collapse in the past 100 years, he said. "We saw them coming. We prepared for them. Sometimes we prevented them. Sometimes we quietly ensured they resolved in ways that promoted stability." Zirathel studied the new information, seeing patterns she had never noticed before. Conflicts that had ended unexpectedly. Economic crises that had resolved themselves through mysterious interventions. Diplomatic breakthroughs that had seemed miraculous at the time. "You've been manipulating galactic history," she realized. "We've been guiding it," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference. Manipulation implies deception for selfish gain. What we've been doing is more like gentle course corrections to prevent disasters. Without anyone knowing, without anyone consenting." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, because asking permission would have made it impossible to be effective. Because most species would rather risk catastrophe than admit they need help. Because sometimes the best government is the one people don't realize they have." Zirathel forced herself to stand and walk to the window again. Below, her city continued its daily rhythms, unaware that everything they thought they knew about their place in the galaxy was wrong. "The technology you've shared with us," she said. Our improved shield generators, our new medical scanners, the efficiency improvements to our factories. All of that was you guiding our development. All of that was us sharing knowledge that would help you build a stronger, more prosperous society, Marcus replied. Every innovation we've provided has genuine value. We didn't give you toys to keep you busy. We gave you tools to become better than you were, but always in directions that served your interests. Always in directions that served everyone's interests, Marcus corrected. A stronger Veltaran empire benefits humanity, yes, but it also benefits your people, your neighbors, and galactic stability generally. We're not playing a zero-sum game here, Majesty. When our partners prosper, so do we. Zirathel turned back to face him. What about when your partners disagree with your guidance? What happens when someone chooses a path you don't approve of? Marcus's expression grew more serious. That depends on the nature of the disagreement. If it's simply a matter of different approaches to similar goals, we usually step back and let you make your own choices. If it's something that threatens regional stability or endangers innocent populations, we become more involved. Involved how? Economic pressure, usually. Diplomatic isolation. Sometimes more direct interventions if the situation is severe enough. He paused. The Corvan Empire, for instance, has been experiencing increasing difficulty maintaining their supply lines. Their communication networks have become unreliable. Their intelligence services keep encountering unexpected obstacles. You've been sabotaging them. We've been applying pressure to encourage better behavior, Marcus replied. The Corvans' aggressive expansionism threatened 3 different species. Their attacks on civilian shipping violated every treaty they had signed. Their military buildup was destabilizing an entire sector. He shrugged slightly. Sometimes bad actors need to face consequences for their actions. Zirathel realized she was beginning to understand the true scope of human influence. How many species are aware of what you really are? Very few, Marcus admitted. The Nexus Collective suspects we're more than we appear, but they don't know the extent of it. The Helix Coalition thinks we're potential allies against the established powers. Most others still see us as talented newcomers who got lucky with some technological breakthroughs. And you prefer it that way. We find it more efficient. Fear makes people unpredictable. When people are afraid, they make desperate choices that create chaos. It's much easier to work with partners who see us as equals, even if that equality is somewhat illusory. The holographic displays around them shifted again, showing real-time galactic communications traffic. Zirathel watched messages flowing between worlds, trade negotiations, military reports, diplomatic correspondence. All of it was being monitored, analyzed, and cataloged by human intelligence systems. Nothing is private, she observed. Privacy is a luxury species earned through responsible behavior, Marcus replied. Empires that attack their neighbors, governments that oppress their own people, organizations that traffic in weapons or slaves forfeit their right to privacy. Peaceful, responsible civilizations like yours maintain much more autonomy. But you still watch. We still watch, Marcus confirmed, because early warning is the difference between preventing a crisis and cleaning up after one. Because knowing about problems before they become catastrophes allows us to solve them gently instead of violently. A soft chime interrupted their conversation. Marcus touched his communication device. Chen here. Sir, this is Agent Torres in the Palace Security Section. Our sweep is complete. We've identified and removed 17 surveillance devices, 3 communication relays, and 2 data collection nodes. We've also apprehended Lord Vexistar attempting to access the Empress's private files. Understood. What's his status? Currently in secure custody. He's demanding to speak with the Corvan Embassy and claiming diplomatic immunity. Marcus looked at Zirathel. Your call, Majesty. How do you want to handle this? The question brought her back to the immediate reality of her situation. Whatever else was happening on the galactic scale, she still had to deal with betrayal within her own government. The overwhelming scope of human operations didn't change the fact that she had lords who had been working against her. "Bring him to the throne room," she decided. "Summon the full council. It's time to address this situation directly." "And the evidence of his activities?" "Everything. I want complete transparency about what he's been doing and who he's been working with." Marcus nodded and relayed her instructions. After he finished, he looked at her with something that might have been approval. "You're taking this better than most leaders would," he observed. "Am I?" Zirathel asked. "I feel like my entire world just shifted beneath my feet." "Your world did shift," Marcus replied. "But you're adapting to the new reality instead of denying it or raging against it. That's unusual." "What do most leaders do when they learn what you've told me?" "Depends on the species and the individual. Some try to pretend it isn't real. Some become paranoid and start seeing human manipulation in everything. Some try to use the knowledge to gain advantages over their neighbors." Marcus's expression darkened slightly. "Some decide that humanity represents a threat that needs to be eliminated." "And what happens to those leaders?" "They usually find themselves facing sudden political difficulties," Marcus said simply. "Economic problems, military setbacks, internal opposition. Amazing how quickly things can go wrong for people who make poor choices." Zirathel understood the implication. "You remove them." "We rarely have to take direct action," Marcus replied. "Most problematic leaders create enough enemies through their own bad decisions that removing our support is sufficient. People who make themselves threats to galactic stability tend not to remain in power very long." The casual way he discussed removing world leaders made Zirathel's scales prickle with unease. But she also recognized the cold logic behind it. If humanity really was capable of preventing wars and maintaining stability, then leaders who threatened that stability were threats to everyone. "What would have happened if I had chosen differently today?" she asked. "If I had sided with Vextar and the Corvins?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "We would have been disappointed," he said finally. "We've invested a lot of time and effort in building a partnership with you specifically, but ultimately, we would have adapted our strategies to work around the situation." "Meaning?" "Meaning the Veltaran Empire would have found itself increasingly isolated diplomatically. Your economy would have faced unexpected pressures. Your military would have encountered equipment failures at critical moments." Marcus met her gaze steadily. "We would have made it clear that aligning with aggressive powers carries costs." "And if that wasn't enough?" "Then more direct measures would have become necessary," Marcus said quietly. "But it rarely comes to that. Most leaders are rational enough to recognize when they're fighting a battle they can't win." A new chime interrupted them, and Marcus's communication device activated automatically. "Sir, this is Admiral Reyes. We're receiving priority communications from 17 different governments requesting immediate consultations with human diplomatic missions. The Corvin withdrawal from Veltaran has apparently triggered a significant reassessment of human capabilities throughout this sector." Marcus smiled grimly. "Understood, Admiral. Response?" "Standard protocols. We're scheduling appropriate meetings and preparing updated intelligence briefings. It looks like we're about to have a lot of new friends who want to understand exactly what humanity brings to the galactic community." "Any security concerns?" "Nothing significant. The Helix Coalition is making some aggressive moves, but they're still operating under outdated assumptions about our capabilities. We're monitoring the situation." "Keep me informed." "Chen out." Marcus turned back to Zirathel. "And so it begins. By tomorrow, every intelligence service in the galaxy will be scrambling to reassess what they think they know about humanity. Some will try to become closer allies. Some will try to distance themselves from what they perceive as a threat. Most will simply try to figure out how to adjust their strategies to account for our actual capabilities. Will this cause problems? Some, Marcus admitted. There will be a period of instability as everyone recalculates their positions. But ultimately, it will lead to a more honest set of relationships. No more basing decisions on false assumptions about human weakness. Another chime announced an incoming message. This time it was Castell's voice. Your Majesty, the Council has assembled in the throne room as requested. Lord Vextar is in custody and ready to be presented for judgment. Thank you, Castell. We'll be there shortly. Zirathel looked at Marcus. Are you ready for this? The question is, are you ready for this? Marcus replied. Once you walk into that throne room and present the evidence of Vexitar's betrayal, there's no going back. Every lord in that chamber will know that humanity has been watching them, gathering intelligence, documenting their activities. Your government will never be the same. Zirathel considered this. He was right, of course. The revelation of human surveillance capabilities would fundamentally change how her lords behaved. Some would become more cautious, more careful about their words and actions. Others might become resentful of the scrutiny. All of them would know that their Empress had allies capable of seeing and knowing things they couldn't hide. Will humanity continue to monitor my government? She asked. That depends on you, Marcus replied. If you prefer us to step back, we can reduce our surveillance to basic threat assessment levels. If you want our continued protection against subversion and betrayal, we can maintain current monitoring. The choice is yours. And if I choose reduced monitoring, then you take responsibility for your own security, Marcus said simply. We'll still provide warning of external threats, but internal problems become your responsibility to handle. Zirathel thought about Vextar's betrayal, about the other compromised officials Marcus had identified. Without human intelligence gathering, how many more traitors might work undetected? How many more threats might develop without early warning? I want you to continue monitoring, she decided. But I want regular briefings on what you find. No more secrets between us. If someone in my government is compromised, I want to know immediately. Marcus nodded. That can be arranged. We'll establish formal intelligence sharing protocols. And I want to know more about human operations in general. Not detailed classified information, but enough to understand the scope of what's happening around us. If we're truly going to be partners, I need to understand who I'm partnering with. Also reasonable, Marcus agreed. We can provide general briefings on human activities that affect Veltaran interests. Zirathel moved toward the door, then stopped and looked back at him. Marcus, when you first arrived 3 years ago, did you expect things to develop this way? Honestly? No, Marcus replied. The original plan was much more limited. We expected to establish basic diplomatic relations, assess Veltaran capabilities and intentions, and determine whether your empire represented an opportunity or a threat. He paused. What we found was something we hadn't expected, which was a leader we could genuinely respect, a government we could actually trust, a people we wanted to protect rather than simply monitor. Marcus's voice became more personal. Working with you these past 3 years has been genuinely rewarding, both professionally and personally. Even though you were lying to me the entire time. I was never lying to you, Marcus said firmly. I was simply not telling you everything. Every recommendation I made, every piece of advice I offered, every opinion I expressed was genuine. The fact that I had additional knowledge and capabilities doesn't change that. Zirathel studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. What she saw was sincerity, mixed with something that looked like regret. You wish you could have told me sooner, she realized. I wish the circumstances had allowed for more honesty, Marcus admitted. But I understand why the protocols exist. Trust has to be earned gradually, especially when the stakes are so high. And now? Now we can build something better than what we had before, Marcus said. A partnership based on complete honesty instead of careful omissions. An alliance where both parties know exactly what they're committing to. Zirathel nodded slowly. Then let's go deal with Lord Vextar and begin building that partnership. As they walked toward the throne room, Zirathel reflected on how completely her world had changed in the space of a few hours. This morning, she had been the empress of what she thought was an independent empire, dealing with what she thought were ordinary diplomatic challenges. Now she knew she was the junior partner in an alliance with the most advanced civilization in galactic history. It should have been humbling, even crushing. Instead, she found herself feeling oddly relieved. The weight of responsibility she had carried, the constant worry about threats she couldn't see and challenges she couldn't predict, had been shared all along. Humanity had been watching, protecting, guiding from the shadows. "Marcus," she said as they approached the great doors to the throne room. "Yes, Majesty?" "Thank you," she said simply, "for protecting us, for protecting me, for trusting me enough to tell me the truth." Marcus smiled, and this time it was the warm, genuine expression she had grown accustomed to over their years of partnership. "Thank you for being worthy of that trust," he replied. The great doors opened before them, and they entered the throne room together. Inside, the assembled lords waited in tense silence, with Lord Vextar standing in restraints at the center of the chamber. It was time to begin the next phase of the Veltaran Empire's relationship with humanity. Time to build something new on the foundation of truth, rather than carefully managed ignorance. As Empress Zirathel took her place on the throne, with her human partner standing beside her in his true role at last, she felt a profound sense of change settling over everything. The galaxy was a different place than it had been this morning. The balance of power was different than anyone had realized, and the future would be different than anyone had imagined. But for the first time in years, she felt truly confident that it would be a better future. With humanity as genuine allies rather than mysterious partners, with truth rather than diplomatic fiction as the foundation of their relationship, the Veltaran Empire could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The age of human secrecy was ending. The age of true partnership was about to begin.